People like to talk about money as if it's power. I learned early that money is only loud, power is quiet. When I look back now, after everything that happened, after the headlines, the trials, the stories people tell like they were there, the moment that mattered most wasn't when I made my first real dollar. It was the moment I refused one, $1 million. That number sounds different today. Back then, it wasn't just money. It was control. It was permission. It was a door that only opened one way. Bumpy Johnson didn't have to explain who he was. Harlem already knew. When Bumpy spoke, people listened because they understood what silence from him could mean. He didn't threaten. He didn't brag. He didn't waste energy. He let reputation do the work. When he brought that offer to me, it wasn't dramatic. No raised voices, no witnesses, just two men sitting in the kind of quiet that makes your thoughts loud. He didn't rush it. Men like Bumpy never do. He told me what needed to be handled. He didn't describe it in detail, because detail wasn't the point. The point was the line I would have to cross to earn that money. I understood immediately what he was asking, not just to do something violent. Plenty of men could do that. He was asking me to belong. Once you accept money like that, you don't just owe a favor. You owe alignment. Your future decisions stop being yours. You move when you're told. You stop thinking long-term and start thinking about pleasing the man who paid you. I had watched men fall into that trap my whole life. They thought they were climbing. What they were really doing was shrinking. Their world got smaller. Their options disappeared. Every move had to be approved, every silence explained. I didn't want to be owned, so I said no, not aggressively, not emotionally, just a calm refusal. I told him I wasn't the right man for that kind of work. That moment stretched longer than it should have. Most men expect anger when they refuse power. That's a mistake. Real power doesn't explode. It observes. Bumpy didn't move. He didn't smile either. He just looked at me, like he was measuring something he hadn't expected to measure. I could feel the weight of that decision settling in my chest. Saying no to a man like that wasn't bravery. It was commitment. Because once you say no, you can't take it back. You don't get to explain later. You don't get to soften it. You live with it. What people don't understand is that refusal is louder than obedience. Obedience tells people what you'll do. Refusal tells them who you are. I wasn't trying to challenge Bumpy. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was protecting my future. Because I knew something then that took other men years to learn. If you let someone buy your worst decision, they'll own every good decision after it. When I walked out of that room, I wasn't richer, but I was free. And in Harlem, freedom makes people nervous, especially the ones who are used to owning everything around them. Saying no doesn't end a story. It starts a different one. After that moment with Bumpy, nothing obvious changed. No threats followed me. No warnings reached my ears. Nobody tried to scare me straight. And that's how I knew the refusal had landed harder than a yes ever could. In Harlem, reaction tells you everything. Loud men react loud. Weak men react fast. Powerful men react slow. Bumpy reacted slow. That's when the pressure began. Not from him directly, but from the space around me. When you turn down a man like that, people notice. Not because you announce it, but because the streets feel it. Conversations stop when you walk by. Looks linger a second longer. Questions get asked quietly. Who does he think he is? What's he planning? Is he protected or reckless? I didn't answer any of that. I stayed disciplined. I kept my routines tight. Same hours, same movements, no unnecessary conversations, no sudden upgrades. I didn't flash money because I wasn't chasing attention. I wasn't trying to look important. I was trying to stay unreadable. That's harder than it sounds. Most men crave validation. They want confirmation they made the right move. They want reassurance. I didn't give myself that luxury, because in this world, comfort makes you sloppy. Instead, I watched. I watched who got nervous around me. I watched who suddenly acted friendly. I watched who avoided me altogether. Refusal rearranges relationships. Some people respect it, others resent it. The dangerous ones are the ones who pretend it didn't happen. I understood something then that shaped everything that came after. When you say yes to power, you gain access. When you say no, you gain definition. People begin to define you in their minds. They start building theories, and theories make them cautious. That caution became my shield. I wasn't invisible anymore, but I wasn't exposed either. I existed in a space between curiosity and uncertainty freezes people. They hesitate, they delay, they wait to see what you'll do next. I didn't rush to answer that question. I focused on structure. I learned how money actually moved. Not street money, real money, supply chains, transportation, weak links, where things leaked, where people cut corners, where loyalty ended and fear began. Violence was easy. Any fool could pull a trigger. What mattered was sustainability. You couldn't build anything lasting if every solution ended in blood. Blood brings noise. Noise brings attention. Attention brings collapse. I was building something quieter. That's what people never saw coming. Bumpy didn't teach me this directly. He didn't have to. His whole life was proof. He survived because he didn't act emotionally. He survived because he let other men make mistakes first. I was doing the same, and somewhere in that silence, I could feel the evaluation happening. Not formal, not spoken, just a steady awareness that I was being watched, not to be stopped, but to be understood. That's a dangerous position to be in, because once people start trying to understand you, they start planning around you. And plans are never neutral. By refusing that money, I had stepped into a different game, a slower one, a deeper one, a game where nobody tells you the rules, and every move carries weight long after it's made. I hadn't gained an enemy yet, but I had earned attention. And attention is always the first warning. There's a difference between being followed and being watched. When you're followed, you feel footsteps. You hear cars slow down. You notice the same face twice in one day. That kind of attention is clumsy. It's meant to scare you. What I felt after refusing Bumpy was different. It was cleaner. I wasn't being chased. I was being observed. Nobody blocked my path. Nobody tested me openly. Life kept moving, but the margins tightened. Doors didn't open as easily. Information arrived slower. People answered questions with half sentences instead of stories. That's how you know you're under review. In Harlem, when a powerful man wants to understand you, he doesn't interrogate you. He removes friction and sees what you do with freedom. He watches whether you panic, whether you overcompensate, whether you expose your weaknesses trying to prove you don't have any. I did none of that. I stayed quiet and worked. I focused on what nobody else was paying attention to. Supply didn't interest people back then. Everybody wanted to control territory, corners, faces, reputation. I wasn't interested in any of that. Territory creates conflict. Conflict creates heat. Heat attracts people who don't belong. I wanted insulation. I learned how things entered the city, how they moved, who handled paperwork, who didn't ask questions, who could be trusted to forget what they saw if the price was right. I watched patterns repeat themselves. People get lazy. Systems decay. That's where opportunity lives. Every day I didn't react was a message. It said I wasn't emotional. It said I wasn't desperate. It said I wasn't trying to prove anything. That unsettled people. Because men who don't need to prove themselves usually already know where they're going. I could feel the balance shifting, not dramatically, subtly. Conversations changed tone when my name came up. People stopped joking around it. They started speaking carefully. That's when I understood something else. Bumpy wasn't waiting for me to fail. He was waiting to see if I would rush. Most men do. They mistake patience for permission. They push too far, too fast, thinking silence means approval. Then they step into something they weren't invited into and get crushed. I didn't move. That restraint started paying off in ways I didn't expect. People who were tired of chaos started finding me, not asking for protection, asking for predictability, asking for stability, asking for a system that didn't change rules every time someone's mood shifted. That's how real power grows, not by force, by reliability. I wasn't loud, I wasn't flashy, but I was consistent. And consistency makes people comfortable. Comfortable people talk. Comfortable people share information. Comfortable people bring opportunities. I never announce myself as anything. I let other people assign meaning to my presence. And that's when I realized the refusal had done something irreversible. I was no longer a subordinate in anyone's imagination. I had become a variable. Variables scare people more than enemies. Enemies are predictable. Variables are not. Still, nothing happened. No confrontation, no blessing, no punishment, just pressure without touch. And that's when it hit me. Bumpy wasn't testing my loyalty anymore. He was testing my endurance, because the man who can live under observation without cracking is the man who can survive what comes next. And what came next wasn't quiet. Violence is obvious. Pressure is invisible. That's what most people never understand. When someone wants to break you, they don't always come at you head on. They tighten the world around you until every step costs more energy than it should. That's what started happening to me. Nothing dramatic, nothing you could point to and complain about. Just small things. A delay here. A missed connection there. A favor that used to be automatic suddenly required a conversation, and conversations turned into negotiations. That's how pressure works. It hides inside inconvenience. I knew what it was. Harlem knew what it was. But nobody said it out loud. Saying it out loud would have meant acknowledging who was applying it, and nobody wanted to do that. Still, I didn't push back. I adjusted. I found alternatives. I rerouted. I stopped relying on anyone who could be leaned on by someone else. Every obstacle forced me to become more self-sufficient, and that, whether intentional or not, made me stronger. I wasn't fighting Bumpy. I was outgrowing dependency. That's the part people miss when they talk about mentors. A real mentor doesn't just show you how to win. He shows you how fragile your position really is. He forces you to see which parts of your life only exist because someone else allows them to. When those parts started disappearing, I took notes. I watched who distanced themselves from me the moment things got slightly uncomfortable. I watched who stayed neutral. I watched who quietly stayed loyal without asking questions. Pressure reveals character faster than fear, and every name I filed away during that time became important later. There were nights I could feel the tension in my body, not fear, calculation, wondering how far this would go, wondering if the silence would ever break, wondering if one day I'd wake up and realize the decision I made months earlier had already sealed my fate. But I never showed it. You don't survive by showing uncertainty. I kept my posture steady, my tone even, my presence consistent. I didn't complain. Complaining tells people where it hurts. I didn't boast. Boasting invites challenge. I stayed boring. And boring men are hard to destroy. What I didn't know then, but understand now, is that this phase wasn't about stopping me. It was about measuring me. If I lashed out, I would have revealed myself as emotional. If I panicked, I would have revealed myself as dependent. If I rushed, I would have revealed myself as impatient. I did none of that. So the pressure continued, but it didn't escalate. That's when I realized something had shifted. I wasn't being squeezed anymore. I was being respected. Not openly, not verbally, but in the way the pressure stopped tightening, in the way obstacles stopped multiplying, in the way I was allowed to exist again without friction. That's when it became clear to me. The refusal hadn't made me an enemy. It had made me a question, and powerful men don't rush to answer questions they're still thinking about. But there was a cost. Because once you prove you can survive pressure without violence, people start wondering something else. What happens when you finally decide to move? And that question is when patience becomes dangerous. When Bumpy died, nobody celebrated. That alone should tell you how deep his shadow ran. Harlem didn't erupt into chaos the way outsiders expected. There were no open wars in the streets, no immediate bloodshed, no dramatic takeover. What happened instead was more dangerous. Everything paused. Power doesn't disappear when a man dies. It scatters. It waits. It looks for hands steady enough to hold it. People forget that Bumpy had already survived longer than most men like him ever do. He didn't die violently. He didn't die running. He died sitting down, in public, calm until the very end. That kind of death does something to people's psychology. It makes them cautious. After his funeral, everybody started watching everybody else. Who would move first? Who would claim space too fast? Who would mistake silence for permission? I didn't move. That wasn't strategy. It was instinct. I had already learned the most important lesson Bumpy ever taught me, even if he never said it directly. The man who moves last has the cleanest view of the battlefield. While others rushed to fill the vacuum, I paid attention to the mistakes they made. They talked too much. They tried to assert dominance before they understood the new balance. They showed their hands early, and once you show your hand, you can't put the cards back. I didn't need to announce myself. I'd been building quietly for years by then. My structure didn't depend on Bumpy's approval or protection. It didn't collapse when his name stopped carrying weight. That was the difference. People started coming to me without realizing why. Not for leadership, not for permission, for stability. They wanted predictability. They wanted operations that didn't change every week. They wanted someone who didn't panic when pressure shifted. They wanted someone who had already proven he could say no when saying yes would have been easier. That reputation came back to me now. The refusal that once made people nervous now made them comfortable, because men who can refuse power are less likely to abuse it. That's what they believed, at least. I still didn't rush. I knew better than to think the game was over just because one king was gone. Kings fall, but systems remain. And systems don't forget who tested their limits. There were still eyes on me. Different eyes now, more cautious, less forgiving. People wanted to know whether I would overreach. I didn't. I let others exhaust themselves. I let them create noise. I let them attract attention they couldn't handle. Every mistake they made cleared space I didn't have to fight for. That's when I understood something cold and undeniable. Saying no to that $1 million hadn't just protected me from becoming someone's tool. It had positioned me for something much bigger. I wasn't stepping into Bumpy's role. I was stepping past it. But power always demands payment. And the price for independence is that eventually someone will try to take it from you. Quietly at first, then all at once. I didn't know who would make the next move. I just knew one thing for certain. They wouldn't offer me money this time. People think the first refusal is the hard part. It isn't. The hard part is what comes after, when the world realizes you can't be bought the easy way. After Bumpy was gone, the city felt different. Not louder, sharper. Like everyone was speaking more carefully, choosing words the way a man chooses steps on thin ice. Harlem didn't belong to one voice anymore. It belonged to tension. And tension attracts interest. That's when the second offer came. Not from one man, not from one direction, and not wrapped in politeness. It didn't arrive as money on a table. It arrived as opportunities lining up too neatly, doors opening that had been closed for years, problems resolving themselves before I even touched them, people offering help without being asked. That's how you know something's wrong. Nothing in this world moves that smoothly unless someone wants something back. I didn't ask who was behind it. I didn't need to. Power never introduces itself directly. It lets you enjoy the benefits first, so the cost feels smaller when it finally shows up. I kept operating the same way I always had. Quiet, controlled, patient. But the pressure was different now. Before, it had been a test. Now it was a countdown. People around me started acting nervous. Loyal men began asking questions they never asked before. Not about money, about timing, about exposure, about what I would do if something happened. That's when I understood the real danger of independence. When you stand alone long enough, people stop seeing you as protected. They start seeing you as available. The second offer finally revealed itself in a conversation that wasn't meant to sound threatening. Those are the worst kind. Calm voices, reasonable tone, a suggestion, not a demand. They told me how far I'd come. They told me how impressive my discipline was. They told me how unfortunate it would be if something disrupted what I'd built. Then they explained what they wanted. Not blood, not violence, alignment. They wanted to know which side I was on, because sides had formed, even if nobody admitted it yet. And in a city like this, neutrality doesn't last forever. Eventually, silence is interpreted as resistance. I didn't answer right away. That silence was heavier than any refusal. I saw it in their eyes. The shift. The realization that I wasn't going to be managed the way other men were. That I wasn't looking for protection. That I wasn't interested in being absorbed. That's when the conversation ended. Politely. Too politely. As I walked away, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not fear. Finality. Because I knew then what most men only realize when it's too late. Saying no the first time makes you impressive. Saying no the second time makes you a problem. And problems don't get negotiated with forever. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because I was calculating. Running through scenarios, timelines, weak points. The kind of thinking you do when you know the game has shifted and nobody's going to warn you again. I had refused money. I had refused ownership. Now I was refusing alignment. And in this world, that means only one thing. Someone, somewhere, had decided. I needed to be tested in a way words could no longer handle. And the next move wouldn't come with an offer.